since 1951. This is The Legend. 105.3, 95.3, WDXE.
Hey, that's us. Speaking of legends,
Curtis, don't go there.
My guest today is Curtis Peters. Thank you for coming. For one thing, I appreciate you. This is your second trip with us.
It is.
Yeah, and I'm glad to have you. Of course, Curtis Peters helps to maintain and operate the jail museum, Lawrence County's history guru, I'll say. Our historian.
One of several.
There's lots of group, don't you?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And there's we have our officers in the club, and there's lots of other people who are not, that still like history and look for answers. And
Yeah.
all that stuff.
I have a neighbor. Does Clint Alley help you guys here and there?
Every now and then, I use some of Clint's articles when I do the quarterly.
He's quite the historian too. He keeps up with stuff. And he's a neighbor of mine around the countryside. Out there.
Some of his trivia every day over there.
He was recommended a book the other day that had something to do with the history of Nashville. And I was just reading what he'd written about that, just commenting on it. And I thought, well, based on his recommendation, I may get that book.
There you go.
Whatever. Curtis Peters, glad you're with us. Thank you again for coming. And of course, it's Springs Neighbors Hour, and that is brought to you here by my company, Keller Williams Hood Company, selling real estate everywhere, anywhere that you want to sell real estate. How about that? And of course, we're glad to have you here. What's happening maybe new with the Historical Society?
Well, we open up for the summer. Generally we go from April to about Labor Day with regular hours at the museum. And then when Labor Day we close, we do about appointments that people want to call us and schedule a meeting or something, we go down there.
Okay.
Good deal. We're there Monday through Friday from 10 till 2. We'll have somebody down there.
Oh, great. What are the hours again?
10 till 2.
10 till 2.
Monday through Friday.
For those that might want to make a trip on the weekend, is that doable?
That's doable if you call myself or Doyle Shattuck. We'll try to get somebody there if we can't be there.
I think it'd be neat to have, if you had like a group, maybe a Sunday school class or this, that, and the other, that you might want to take a little excursion.
Do a lot of Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts.
Yeah.
I've got leadership Lawrence County. He's coming in this morning at 9:30 after I leave here. I've got a group coming about 25:30.
Now, Leadership Lawrence County has been in the works for a while. I went through that many years.
Started a long time ago with adults, and now they do adults one session, and they'll do youth from the three high schools the next time.
That's relatively new. They've been doing that for a little while. But Leadership Lawrence County Youth Group, so that's the high school age. Well, that's cool. That's very neat. Very neat. You told me before we came on the air, and actually when I talked to you about coming, that you had done some recent research, I guess, and presentations on the history of railroads in Lawrence County. Is that something that's kind of off the top of your mind?
I'm always railroads. I've got a big model train layout I work on, but I've always been railroads because my grandfather and great-grandfather were both engineers, and I had uncles that were engineers, and so I've always been around trains. And Lawrence County's railroad history is just really neat.
Really? Yeah. Well, we don't. That's something we don't see much of anymore. Is train traffic, not like we used to. And I guess it was even more before my time.
Used to. Think about how many depots we used to have in Lawrence County.
Well, I have no idea.
We had 13 wooden-built depots at one time, and around 12 boxcar depots. So how many of those do we have now?
Well, what was the utilization of that around the county? Where were they?
Passenger service.
How were they connected?
Passenger service. The railroad got to Lawrence County in 1883. And they had told them that it could not come from Columbia to Lawrenceburg because they couldn't get up Rockdale Hill. So George Henry Nixon took a mule, spent a week up there mapping out a route, and managed to get the railroad built and came into Summertown in early 1883, and then it got to Lawrenceburg in October of 1883.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about that. So the railroad was coming from Nashville?
The first one they had planned was in the 1850s, and it was going to go from Nashville through Columbia to Hannibal and over to the river down through Mississippi. And then the Civil War broke out, so that one never came to fruition on that. So this one started because George Henry Nixon wanted to get it here for Lawrence County.
Now, who was George Henry Nixon?
He's probably one of our early heroes. He was with William Bethel Allen at Monterey with the Lawrenceburg Blues during the Mexican War. He was the second in command, and when William Bethel Allen was killed, he took over and led the victory. And when he got back to Lawrenceburg, he was a lawyer and big into politics and stuff like that. And so he saw the need for the railroad. And he had fought in the Civil War too. To throw that in, he was in charge of the 48 Tennessee during the Civil War. So he was a big-time person in Lawrence County in the early days.
All right, let's back up and punt it. Because you went through that pretty fast.
Bunch of stuff.
So much stuff. There is so much. Hey, we may have some people that want to call in and ask something or got a comment. And good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Yes.
You're on
WDXE with us.
Yeah, they've got a bad echo on YouTube. You can't understand what they're saying.
On YouTube's
an echo. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure why that is. I don't have a clue why that would be.
I've got everything
set up like I'm supposed to. I think.
I don't know.
All those mics are on the same button, so it's just like it always is. So I don't really know why we're doing an echo on YouTube. I'll turn my do that.
Anyway,
sorry about that.
And the phone lines are open,
766-939. But I want you to back up. But tell me, this guy's name again was what?
George Henry Nixon.
And so was he a native Lawrence County, or
I don't know exactly if he was born and raised here, but he spent most of his life here.
And what did he do the first part you went through?
He was young, and he went with the Lawrenceburg Blues to the Mexican War.
That's what I was going to ask you. The Mexican War and the Lawrenceburg Blues. Who were they?
When James K. Polk called for volunteers from the state of Tennessee to go fight in the Mexican War, that was in 1846. The Lawrenceburg Blues were the first to volunteer. And so they're the first volunteers from the volunteer state. And William Bethel Allen was from Etheridge, and he had graduated from Nashville College, which is Vanderbilt today. And he ran for office and got elected to the state legislature as like a 21-year-old.
Oh, wow.
And when the war broke out, he resigned and came back and joined the Lawrenceburg Blues as a corporal. And went with them to Mexico. And he is the one who we have all our history of that because he wrote. And he wrote articles for the paper. And so when they got to Mexico, for some reason, we don't know why, they re-elected their officers. And they elected William Bethel Allen to be their captain, and they elected George Henry Nixon to be the first lieutenant.
Okay.
And two young guys at the time. And because Allen was the most educated guy they had.
Then of course, the Mexican War. This was the war that David Crockett made famous.
No. Crockett was in 1836. The Alamo was 10 years earlier. So the Mexican War is a war between it's over our southern border between Texas and Mexico. And the U.S. and Mexico claimed the land.
Okay. See, I've got my histories mixed up. I've got my histories mixed up already. So this was Crockett's deal was to declare Texas independence. The Mexican War was
10 years later, we're basically defining our southern border. We wanted it to the Rio Grande, and Mexico wanted it further north. And so James Mexico killed some Americans in that area. So James K. Polk said, American blood has been shed on American soil. And basically it was expansion of the U.S.
Oh, okay. All right. Very, very good. And so a Lawrence County group. Do you know how many were in the Blues?
I do not know exactly how many they had. We can find that number out. But when they got down to Monterey, Zachary Taylor was over the regular army.
Okay.
And Zachary Taylor was going to attack with the regular army on one side, so he had the volunteers attack on the other side to draw them away. And since the Lawrenceburg Blues were the first to volunteer, he let them be the first in battle.
Oh, wow.
And that's not necessarily good because they were also the first to die. About 26 of them got killed. And William Bethel Allen, the leader, was one of the ones that got killed. And they sent his body back to Lawrence County. His brother, Sam Houston Allen, brought his body back. Well, Sam Houston Allen died in New Orleans of some kind of disease, and so the two brothers were brought back to Etheridge and buried in Allen Cemetery in Etheridge next to the Church of Christ.
Wow.
And then Nixon, we were talking about earlier, he took over after Allen was killed and led up to victory.
Okay. All right.
So that started him off right there.
Yeah. So he came back to Lawrence County.
A hero.
Yeah. Pretty much a hero. Yeah, I guess so. Interesting.
Well, something
I'll ask you about, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. But the monument that's on the square.
That's it. That monument was built because so many of the Lawrence Countyans died at Monterey. And so that monument was put up in 1848, 1849. They raised money. They got some money from the state to put that monument up. So that is the oldest item on the square. And it's been there for a long time.
It has been.
And it's one reason we have our courthouse that did get burnt during the Civil War. Because when the Union soldiers came through and burnt the jail in 1863, they were going to burn the courthouse too. And the commander for the 14th Michigan saw the Mexican monument with soldiers from the Mexican War, which he had fought in. He didn't want to burn the courthouse because he was afraid it would destroy the monument.
How about that?
So it saved our courthouse, saved all our Crockett records, it saved all our history, really.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool story. That's really cool. And then of course to bring it back to the railroad. We didn't have the railroad here. They didn't think they could come here because of Rockdale Hill. Yeah. Which is a pretty good hill.
It is. But Nixon figured out a route, and the engineers built the railroad. And the railroad that they built was the Nashville and Florence Railroad, and then it became the Nashville, Florence, and Sheffield. And they got a lot of money from L&N to help build it. And in 1900, L&N basically bought out the rest of them, and L&N had the railroad that came through Lawrence County.
Well, you mentioned all the depots that were, and of course, I guess the use for the railroad was shipping, but also passengers.
That was you have to think, how did you travel in 1893?
Yeah.
Horses, walking, or horse and buggy. And the railroad passenger service was very important here all the way up. It died down a little bit in the 20s when cars started, traffic roads and stuff like that. And the last time they ran passenger service through Lawrence County was in 1954.
Which is not as far back as I would have thought.
Yeah.
1954. So that was the last. What was it for and like? I mean, what do they do? I mean, they're going to get to Nashville.
Basically, the passenger service through here was going Columbia to Florence. This was a branch line off of the main L&N line that went down to Birmingham through Pulaski. And so this was a branch line came through Lawrence County, and probably the main reason it ended up being iron ore, all the western part of the county had lots of iron ore mines, which we've all heard about. And then we had lots of lumbering industry here, so lumber was another big deal that we had here. And then passenger service to get from, in the county.
Yeah. Very good. Now you'll be. I had asked you when you come to think about bringing something with you. And I've been through the jail museum, but it's been a while. Probably added a lot of things. What are some of the items down there that people might enjoy seeing?
We are packed with all kinds. We get neat stuff all the time. One of the most recent things we got was a flag from the Spanish-American War that the Lawrence County soldiers carried in 1898. It was Company D, First Tennessee Volunteers. They were all Lawrence-Countyans. And they went to the Spanish-American War. I don't think they saw any action actually by the time they got over there, but they were there for the Philippine insurrection. And they did engage in conflict and battles in that. And so when they got back, they presented the flag to the county. And they built this really big case and put this flag in it. And so that would have been in the first courthouse that they tore down in 1904. So then they moved it into the 1905 courthouse that we talked about.
Yes.
And it was in that until they built the new courthouse. So then they moved to the new courthouse. Well, they set it behind one of the judges' benches where nobody could see it. And it's been there ever since. They built it. And so when this last year, they started remodeling some new courtrooms in the part of the building there. And they called me up and said, "Do you want this over at the museum?" I said, "What do you think?" So now we have it over at the museum. It's pretty neat. That's one of our neater things that we just got. We have lots of military stuff down there. Of course, we've had lots of admirals and generals from Lawrence County.
That's one of the things that I thought we might talk about is evidently Lawrence County has a pretty rich military history. We do. Which not a lot of people may know anything about. I really did. Until just from talking to you, though, and knowing a little bit, I'm like, we're pretty rich with military history.
Since we started out there with the Mexican War, that would really been the first one we were involved in. The Civil War, we had lots of skirmishes and actions in Lawrence County. The biggest battle, I guess you could say, would probably been Sugar Creek, but Lawrence County was more of a route that the troops traveled through from here to there. Yes. And the biggest one we had was when they were traveling through Lawrence County headed to the Battle of Spring Hill and Nashville. And then the retreat from Spring Hill and Nashville, which ended up with the battle at action at Sugar Creek. So
now, when you say Sugar Creek, where exactly?
It's on the border between Lawrence and Giles County. Okay. Down that area of the county.
Okay. Because I know the Sugar Creek runs. Well, I know where it is. It's go out Fall River there, and then the old Florence Pulaski Road crosses it down there somewhere.
But that would have been the biggest one. And we had one, and it's hard to find out a lot about it. We had one that took place on the way to Nashville in Lawrenceburg. It was an action, and the Southern troops had cannons on the southern border of Lawrenceburg, on the southern boundary, and they were firing against the northern troops on the northern boundary of Lawrenceburg. Well, the northern boundary of Lawrenceburg was about Depot Street at the time, and the southern boundary would have been down around Shoal Creek, so that's about where they were shooting each other. But you don't find a lot of facts. We just know some of the ones that were here, and the battle took place like 5 hours or so.
Wow.
And General Hatch for the northern troops was just fighting a delaying action to keep the Southerners from getting on up to Columbia Spring Hill.
Just yesterday, I was traveling what we call the turnpike up in going to Summertown, but it's also called the Army of Tennessee Highway. Did you know about? I'm sure you know.
That's where Hood's troops when they came through Lawrence County. He divided his forces into three different groups, and two of them came through Lawrence County, and one went up through Waynesboro. And they will end up joining together. Two of them join together around Hannibal. And so that's the route that they're carrying, and they will have a skirmish at Hannibal, and then they'll have an action at Foul Springs in Summertown. So they had some fighting along. They're doing the same way there. They're trying to delay the Southern troops movements north. And all that's happening at the same time that you had the action down here in Lawrence.
Okay. Now, I saw the piece of property a while back, that I guess somewhat historic piece of property. I knew it growing up as the Lindsay House, which is below the square, kind of across from the Presbyterian Church up there. Monument Hill.
Yeah.
So what do you know any history of that particular place? Because at that time, when I was handling that property, I was told it was one of the oldest houses in Lawrenceburg.
Probably around 1854, somewhere in that neighborhood. Of course, it's had a lot done since then, but it's one of the two older houses in Lawrenceburg.
Yeah. Did it have any play or activity during any of the Civil War? The reason I'm asking that, somebody told me, and I was trying to find out about it back then, that house was originally built by a doctor in Lawrenceburg at that time, but I don't really know.
I'd have to look back. I've got some stuff written on that, but every now and then you have to look back and find answers. You forget a few of them. I don't know exactly. The McLeans lived there, and John Booker Kennedy married one of the McLean daughters, and he was from Giles County, and he moved over here. And
I've also been told that's one of the highest points in the county, or at least in Lawrenceburg.
Probably in Lawrenceburg. Highest point in the county is Summertown.
Yes.
And it's 1,050 feet in elevation.
Yes.
I had a weather station that Channel 4 put in my room at school, so they had to get the barometer synced to elevation. So I know how high that is.
Yeah, I knew that Summertown and the Summertown area was on a plateau pretty high. But we've got some other high spots that, I tell this, where Teresa and I built our home out on Prosser Road. We built a two-story home. During the time we built that, of course, I was up on the top. And where we were on that knob,
you
could see West Point.
Yeah.
I mean,
You could see the entire county pretty much from that. And I've always wondered about that little spot being one of the higher spots in the county.
I know Laurel Hill's got a high point over there. So the two corners. Back when I was doing my computer stuff at school with the Department of Energy, we did a map of Lawrence County with the elevation for every half a mile. And so it was pretty neat. You could look at a 3D map of Lawrence County. So the two highest points were Laurel Hill and Summertown on the top two corners. And then there would be spots around the county that would pop up, but not quite as high.
I could from up there, I could see the. I could see very clearly the Etheridge water tower with no problem. And then there was a water tower that I never could exactly decide where it was, that I could see southwest of us. And it was way down there. But you could, if you got above the tree line there, you could see everywhere. What do you think higher, really?
First water tower. That's a good historical thing.
Where was the first water tower? I hadn't thought about that.
Of course, you had them along the railroad because trains were steam, so they had to have water tanks. But your first city water tower will be the one that was downtown Lawrenceburg that everybody used to see. I remember it was built in 1908. And that's when they put the first dam in. And in 1908, they put the first power down, and that provided us with electricity.
Okay.
And provided us with water.
Did that fix that?
I'm sorry,
we had a technical issue, and I had sent them in to check it. Okay.
I didn't do that. I did that, but I didn't do that.
Just a click of the mouse.
Click of the mouse.
There you go.
Always good to see you.
All right, I had sent word because we got that message about the repeat, and I knew something was set wrong, but I couldn't tell what.
Yeah, the first water tank was in Lawrenceburg in 1908, and that will be the first time you actually have water on the square. First time you have power. On the square,
Interesting.
And so anything before that, they had a wagon that they would have to go down to Spout Springs, and they would have a pipe coming out of the springs. They'd fill the barrels up with water, and they'd drive up to the square and sell the water for a nickel a bucket.
Oh, interesting.
So that's how they got to that or a cistern.
Well, I remember that water tower being there, and believe it or not, oh my gosh, right across the road from that water tower, I was just a boy. My dad and a friend of his, Mr. Richard Yates, they hung around each other. They both had a backhoe at one time, or Dad had one and Richard had one. I don't know how they did this, but anyway, we're tearing down a building. It was an old gas station right there almost across from where that water tower was. I think it was some kind of gas station or something, and they were tearing it down. It kind of got the job to do that somehow or other. And we were there one evening, and Richard's son found a cue ball and decided he could throw it high enough to hit that water tower.
I don't think so. It was a good ways up there.
It was. But anyway, I remember that. It was a kind of a childhood memory there.
I think
that was the old fire hall was pretty.
It was right. Well, the original fire hall was right across the street from it, and then they built the fire hall right there under the water tank with the police station. I think they had the library there too.
Had the library.
So with all that water on top of you.
Yeah, I remember the library being there.
Yeah.
Do you remember when it came down?
I think around 1974, somewhere in there.
It was there.
Yeah,
well enough. So that's interesting.
I think it was a 100,000-gallon water tank is what it was.
Well, I got a message here from one of our listeners that said something about the Crowder Road area being the highest point in Lawrenceburg. I don't know. I don't know either. But there's I guess a couple of different places that we claim. Of course, Crowder Road is near where I was telling you I lived. There on Prosser Road. So, and it is. I mean, you can see everywhere. You get up above the tree line.
Yeah. With our phone technology we have now, you can get you an elevation app on there and tell you exactly how high things are. So that's
true.
That's the
not
best
hard
way,
to find out.
That's the best way to solve that.
Not hard to find out at all. Let's see if somebody wants to talk to us this morning. Hey, good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
Curtis, I want to get back to you were talking about the railroad. The last passenger was in 1954, through Lawrenceburg. Well, what about the back in '64, whenever there was a train that took fans to the Clinic Bowl. I remember I rode that train. I think it was November 28th of '64.
Yeah. You know,
Do you have any information on that?
I don't. I know they ran that special train, and they ran one year for Mule Day. They came down and ran a special train, and the one I really remember was in 1961. I was 10 years old, and at Loretta Elementary, we walked from the school up to the railroad depot, and the General came through. And the General was the train for the great locomotive chase from the Civil War, where the Northerners stole the Southern train, and then the Southerners chased them from Atlanta to Chattanooga. Well, they restored that train for the centennial of the Civil War, and it went around the state, and it came through Lawrence County, stopped in Lawrenceburg, picked up people, and came down to Loretta. So I remember going down and standing at the depot in Loretta and seeing the General come through. Really neat, with the cow catcher on the front and the burning, wood burning train.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's cool. Thank you, man.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that would run a special one every now and then. The last one that ran was what we called the Huckety Buck.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
everybody talks about the Huckety Buck. My mom talked about riding the Huckety Buck. Of course, when they quit running it, I was 3 years old, so I never got the opportunity to do it. But it was a electric diesel powered front car with the passenger sitting in it, and then a freight car behind it. So it was two cars is what it was. And it ran from Columbia to Florence and back to Columbia, and that carried the passengers from, they could ride from Summertown to Lawrenceburg, or they could ride from Loretta to Lawrenceburg, so that's how they traveled on the rails then.
I wonder what, do you know about how long it would take to go from, say, Lawrenceburg to Columbia or Lawrenceburg to Florence?
The schedule, when you go back into the 1800s, I've got a schedule in the 1800s where the train would leave St. Joe. The train ended in St. Joe in 1886 for several years. And so they would leave St. Joe and go to Columbia and then come back to St. Joe. And it took 3 hours to get from St. Joe to Summertown.
Oh, really?
On the train. So it's not going very fast. And then it would get to Columbia, say probably 5 hours to Columbia, and then 5 hours back. You'd stay there for a while, then it would come back.
That's probably still faster than walking a horse.
It would be walking, faster than a horse or a buggy or something. But yeah, it took a while. It was a lot longer than you thought it would be.
We talk about people being at a slower pace back then, I guess, and but it was kind of necessity. We didn't have the fast pace.
Well, they said when the train got to Lawrenceburg in October of 1883, Lawrenceburg had a population of around 1,000 people. And when the train got there, they had 6,000 people there to see the train arrive in Lawrenceburg.
Oh, really?
People came from everywhere, and the train was supposed to have been here a lot earlier. And they said they stop every time they see a group of people by the railroad tracks, they'd stop and pick them up. So people came from everywhere because they had never seen a train before.
Oh, yeah.
They'd never been out of the county, or they didn't travel far.
I hadn't thought about that, but people had never seen it.
They'd never seen it. They didn't know what a train. They said the whole roof of the depot was covered with people. All the buildings around were covered with people, and they had a big, huge barbecue picnic with 6,000 people at it. And at that picnic, they presented George Henry Nixon with a cane. Okay, here, let me tell you a story about a cane.
Okay.
I'm not too long after I took over for Bobby Alford down at the museum, had a guy came in from North Carolina, and we're talking about George Henry Nixon and the railroad and the cane. And he says, "I've got that cane at home." I said, "What?" And he's from North Carolina. He said, "Yeah." I said, "George Henry Nixon and my great-grandfather were best buddies, and he gave him the cane." He said, "Next time I come to Lawrenceburg, I'll bring the cane." And he brought the cane back to us, and we've got it at the museum.
You're kidding
me.
No,
it's at the museum.
I love to collect canes.
Yeah.
I've got a whole bunch of them. Some of them are basically meaningless. Most of them are. But I've got a few that at least I knew who it belonged to, and it kind of means something to me here and there. I've got one or two that's like that.
But just think about that. That cane has got a history, and
we've
got it,
Wow. Tell me, what does it look like? What's it?
It's long, skinny, and it's just got the knob, a gold knob. It's a gold knobbed cane.
Gold knob cane. Yeah. Okay. So it's not a crooked
It's not a crook cane. It's a gold knobbed cane, yeah. Black.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. How cool is that? From how old would that cane be?
1883.
Wow.
So,
see, that's a prized possession of the
140 years old.
And this George Henry Nixon has become. I'm like, well, I'd like to know even more about that guy.
I would say he was the guy between 1850 and 1900. He was the guy in Lawrence County.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. And you said he ended up with some kind of political office?
He went to territories out west and stuff like that for the government, and of course he was a lawyer here, and he became president of the railroad company that when the railroad came through here. So a lot of that type of stuff.
So the railroad had to be built, obviously.
Yep.
What do you know, or do you know about the actual construction part, and who was behind that? I mean, how did that take place?
They would, they had to hire a company to come in and build it. And I found on eBay, I love looking at eBay for stuff, but I found a letter that was dated in Lawrenceburg in 1883. And the letter was from Stansel and Rhodes, and that was the construction company that had built the railroad from Columbia to Lawrenceburg, and their contract had run out. And this letter, they're in Lawrenceburg, and they're sending it out somewhere looking for a new job.
Really?
Yeah, and it's Stansel and Rhodes, and that's the company that built the railroad into here. And L&N paid for a lot of the equipment and stuff to build a railroad. So that's how L&N got their hands on the.
You know where they would have been out of, Stansel and Rhodes?
I don't know. I think this letter was sent to South Carolina, but I don't know exactly where they were out of.
Interesting.
But you got to think they're building trestles, and of course the trestles they got to build are wooden. In every little creek they got to build a wooden one. But the biggest one coming into Lawrenceburg would have been the one at Walker Road in Summertown. And I remember it being wood for many, many years. It's concrete now. And then when they left Lawrenceburg, of course, going across Shoal Creek, that's going to be a pretty good size one there.
Yeah.
So that had to be wood at one time.
Well, now, when you go north out of Summertown on the 4-lane, you cross this tremendously high bridge.
Yeah.
And it's not crossing a creek. Well, maybe a little creek down there.
You see how that's why they said you couldn't build a railroad through there.
But the railroad's down below.
Yeah,
right there. So how does it wind around?
I'd have to pull a map out and look, but it winds around, and I'm sure that's a slow go coming up that because that's the Highland Rim, and you're coming out of the Central Basin where Columbia is up to the Highland Rim and over the Highland Rim and then down to Lawrenceburg.
Yeah,
so,
interesting.
Yeah,
very interesting. Well,
I'll tell you, they built, when you got to Iron City became the railroad hub because the railroad got to St. Joe and it stopped. And then they started building the railroad, and they were going to go straight on down to Green Hill. That's the way the railroad's supposed to go. And
sure.
when it got to Green Hill, that's where it was going to. But anyhow, they decided to go to Iron City. So they ended up pulling the tracks up they'd already built and turned the railroad there at St. Joe and headed to Iron City. And then it went because of the iron ore. And it went through Iron City and on down to Florence that way. If you go into St. Joe and you're going to Old Road, you'll go over a big hump when you go down through there. And that hump's where the railroad went across the road at one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But then when it got to Iron City, they ran a railroad from Iron City up to Wayland Springs and West Point and Pinckney. And they also ran a railroad from Iron City to Collinwood, and that was the Tennessee Western Railroad. And so from Iron City, you had 4 railroads going out of Iron City.
Really?
So it was a railroad hub. And
well, I've always heard, way back when, that Iron City was, quite a hustling, bustling little place.
Booming place, yeah.
Booming place, and because of the iron ore, I guess.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Well, something else I want to ask you about. And bring it back up to Lawrenceburg Square. A lot of activity on Lawrenceburg Square. A lot of history on Lawrenceburg Square. A lot of these old buildings that people are now renovating, that kind of thing. Has there been any discoveries in these buildings as they've,
well, every now and then you hear some things. When Darrell Valentine when he was alive, he was redoing the Welch building.
Yes.
And they tore all the floor out of the Welch building, and they found all kind of little paper items. I got all those down at the museum. They also found a fire hat, one of the fire hats from one of the original. From the fire department in Lawrenceburg.
I remember that.
And it's down at the fire station. We didn't get it at the museum. If Darrell said if I'd known you wanted it, so I'd given it to you. But it's over at the fire department, so it's in safe hands.
Well, I think I remember seeing it.
Yeah.
Though it might have been brought to the Square 40 or something.
And he said it's got to be the captain's hat. It's got a number 1 on it. I said all their hats had 1 on it because it was their first engine. It's
one engine.
One engine. Yeah, that's what they had. And so they found that there. I know when they were redoing the buildings over on Columbia Avenue off the square, they found 2 rooms underneath there that they didn't know were there, and they had cots in them. And that's all they found in them. And then when they tore down the WDXE building, when they cleaned that square off for that parking lot,
yes.
They found a couple rooms underneath it they didn't know were there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So we have an underground Lawrenceburg we don't know about.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
You know, some of those old buildings too. In fact, I had the privilege of getting to sell recently the Ledbetter building. The gentleman who's bought it is planning a renovation there. And I don't know exactly all of his plans, but the plans are to bring that thing back and make it into a gathering spot, probably coffee, ice cream shop,
Yep.
that kind of thing.
Be neat.
And possibly an apartment upstairs. But that's in the works, and it's going to be a slow go, I think. But I had the privilege of getting to work on that and got a little bit of history from Mrs. Ledbetter on how they acquired it. But do you know further back in that building what it was? I think it was. Do you know anything about that building in particular?
I don't know before Ledbetter's. A lot of the buildings on the square, of course, you got to remember all those buildings at one time were wood frame buildings. And when we had fires, we didn't have fire departments, or they were volunteer fire departments. Mm-hmm. So wood frame buildings burnt really quick. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the old insurance maps, Sanborn insurance maps, you can see when they started building brick buildings, you have less fires, and they end up being there a lot longer. Yeah. I think the 1819 restaurant now, I think that's probably one of the older buildings on the square. It was. Yes. I know the Square 40 building was built somewhere around 1905, somewhere in that area. But you start seeing all those brick buildings built, and you don't have as many fires.
Yeah. Now, the 1819 restaurant building now was, of course, most of us remember being Richardson Hardware.
Yes.
But I'm not sure what it was before that.
It was just the old maps show a hardware store. So Richardson Hardware was probably there. They probably built a new building, and they just transferred their stuff over into that new building.
Interesting.
And so I don't know of anything that was there further back than that. There was a buggy shop out behind it, out there where you have the parking lot behind it. There was a big building that was a buggy shop. They made buggies and things.
Right, right. There's an old photograph of the Lawrenceburg Square that I have seen, and this would have been back in the early car days and still buggy days. And for some reason, whatever was going on there, the square was just covered with people. And there were vehicles. Do you remember? Do you know what this photograph I'm talking about?
I've got several. There's one from 1902, and I think it's when First National Bank is opening.
That might have been.
The square is just full of people.
Full of people sitting on the roofs.
Yeah, and then the next one you see is the one where you got all the wagons with cotton and stuff like that in cars, and that's probably from the 20s. You see a lot of that. Then I've got a couple of them from up in I guess it's the late 40s, early 50s, with Army tanks going around the square. I think that's a pretty neat.
Now, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I've got those too.
I don't know if I've seen that picture.
The neatest ones we have looking at the square are probably from 1937, when they got banners all across the streets and stuff, and they're having the Spanish-American War veterans reunion from the Spanish-American War in 1937 in Lawrenceburg. We were the state convention for it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. You mentioned the First National Bank building. That building, as we know it, on the square, is got the white marble. Yeah. I guess it's not really marble.
It's called the Reserve now.
It's called the Reserve now. But, of course, my mother worked at that bank when it was there.
My mother-in-law did, yeah.
And so I remember the bank actually operating there. But that building was built in 1900. Am I right about that?
Yeah, somewhere around 1900.
Finished in 1900.
And then, of course, it was refaced with all of that. You know, it was red brick under that.
Yes.
And it had a corner door that came out, just like Ledbetter's at one time had a corner door that came out. The Weathers place on the square still has a corner door that comes out. A lot of the buildings had those then. Yeah. But they refaced all of that First National Bank building.
You're talking about those buildings having an underground. That Ledbetter's, of course, has a basement. Yeah. It has an underground. And there is a coal chute, because back in the day they had to bring coal around to heat with, and there's a big furnace down there in the bottom that I don't know how you would ever get out.
Yeah, well,
you have to take it apart.
Yeah, I've been in the basement under Holland's Drugs, and of course you can't stand up. You have to bend over to go down through there, but it's just got all kind of old stuff down there. We actually got the City Drug neon sign out of the basement. It's sitting on my back patio, and whenever I get a big enough place to put it, we're going to redo it and hang it up.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't notice it, but right there close to Holland's Drug, in between Holland's and where the other building is now, I guess it's the pie place, the pie factory.
Pie factory.
there's a door and a set of steps
Yep.
that goes down underneath.
Yeah. The step, it's interesting. They're real narrow steps.
Yes.
It's like regular steps, but half of it goes down and half of it goes up.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Interesting.
Yeah.
I've been down in there
Yeah.
back when we were trying to market and sell some of those buildings.
Yeah.
And it's good to see the investments that are being made on the square and revitalizing those buildings.
It is.
They're looking good.
Something I found when looking at the old insurance maps is before we had the water tank, out in the square where the Mexican monument, between the old courthouse and the Mexican monument, in the ground was a cistern. And on the other side of the courthouse, before the Crockett Monument was even put up, there was a cistern, and that was city water. And what they did is they caught the water off the tops of the courthouse.
Really?
So they would have water to use.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is there still? There used to be a set of steel doors that went down underneath something there in the middle of the square.
Now, I think they originally had some restrooms down underneath there. I think they've closed that off.
Is they closed?
Yeah.
Are the doors still? Is that thing still there?
I don't know. I
don't think it is. I don't think it is.
But I think that's what they originally had there.
I remember that being there, though,
Yeah.
now that I think about it. Interesting. Well, while we're talking about monuments, of course, you mentioned we mentioned the other one. Of course, we've got a David Crockett monument and statue. When was that put up?
1922. However,
Uh-oh.
in 1898, the Lawrenceburg Land Company decided they were going to sell off a lot of property for lots and stuff over around Rosemont and Fall River Road over there. Had two different maps over there, and they had designed they got the road system all laid out, and they had a Crockett Park over there, and they were going to put a monument up for Crockett. This is 1898.
Oh, wow.
And so they ordered a marble statue of Crockett from Italy.
Really?
And anyhow, they went bankrupt, and the monument never got here. So that would have been our first Crockett monument, but it didn't get here. But then the one that we do have was put up in 1922. And then, of course, it was redone a few years ago. It looks really good.
Yeah, it does. It looks good. Looks real. Did they repair the hole in the side when they?
They did. And everybody comes along and claims they know who shot the hole in the side. And of course, the barrel was bent where somebody was hanging on the barrel and stuff. But and one thing you want to notice about when you think about Crockett, you think about coonskin caps, and Ivan Johnson was great about handing out coonskin caps to people, but. Well, Crockett Monument over there, what kind of hat did he have? He's
got a coonskin.
He's got a flat brim cap, you know. He didn't get the coonskin cap till Fess Parker was Crockett on Walt Disney. That was in the 1950s. So
that's true, but that's the way we've idolized him.
That's right.
That's right. Very good. Very good. You said you had a group coming in today, and we've talked about the railroad a little bit. And the square. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you about. This is kind of some recent stuff that's going on. The H.B. Brink Company. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that we were lumber and railroad. Of course, Depot Street there is where the H.B. Brink Company was. I don't remember now. It's on the sign when they were established.
They're somewhere between 1900 and 1905.
Yeah, so around and that so they were established there, and of course on Depot Street.
Been there forever.
But
and you got to think Depot Street was the happening place. I mean, other than the square, it was Depot Street because the people rode the train. They got off at the depot. They walked down the street. The first hotel on the left it was the Neely Hotel. It was a wood frame hotel.
Yes.
They tore it down, built the Kerr Hotel. That building is still there. So they had that hotel. Right across the street on Military, the big white house that's been redone as a beauty salon or something now, that was the English Inn. So people could stay there. Or they could walk on down to the square and stay at the Lawrenceburg Hotel. Or they could go down Pulaski Street and stay at the Sowell Hotel. Yeah. So but they would get off at Depot Street. So Depot Street was a happening place.
Yeah, that was where everybody came and went. Yep. Mm-hmm. And the hotels there that were the one on the corner that I knew as the K Hotel.
K Hotel, Kerr Hotel. It was the Neely Hotel. It had several different names. Now, when the Neely Hotel was the wood frame that was there, right across the street where the Coleman parking lot is, the part right next to Brinks, was the Neely livery stable. So you stay at the hotel, you go over to the livery stable and rent you a buggy or a horse or whatever so you get around on it. And so it was right there across the street from
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I have a somewhat of a prized possession that you know about. I have a cart. It's a railroad cart.
Yeah, I was supposed to have had that,
Do you know we've used that in our fair booths?
Yeah.
And we couldn't determine if it came from Lawrenceburg.
Chunky says it came from Columbia, from the depot in Columbia.
Came from the Columbia depot.
So it's still connected to our railroad.
Still connected to our railroad.
Yep.
But what was it used for?
That would have been our baggage cart on the where they could roll the baggage or freight or anything up and down the, on the platform.
Well, did they hand pull it or did they use a little mule or what did they do?
Hand pull.
It was a hand pull.
Hand pull.
Well, it'd be a heavy thing.
If you loaded it up, it would be. Yeah.
I mean, it's heavy by itself.
Yeah.
I obtained it from Chunky. He was selling out a bunch of stuff one day, and I bought it, and I bought it for my son-in-law, really, who's a photographer, and for our fair booth, we use it and make decorations with it. So it's in good keeping.
Yeah, keep it in. Don't let it sit out in the weather.
No, it's not. It doesn't set out.
Yeah,
it's in good keeping. It stays sheltered. So
that's the problem with the museum. We don't have room for big stuff.
I was going to say you don't really have a place to keep it out there except outside anyway.
Yeah.
But if you ever wanted to show it off, we could make arrangements.
Yeah. And you were talking about stuff at the museum. I mentioned a couple things. Joe Stanford, who used to be one of the plant managers over at Murray, came to the museum the other day, and he brought us a collection of Murray catalogs.
Really?
Going back to 1941. And they're all of their wheeled good items and their bicycles and their Murray mowers, and they're awesome. They're really neat.
Now I don't know if I've ever seen books. I've seen the Murray Cycle magazine.
Yeah, we got all of them too.
Got those too. But now the Murray catalog, I didn't know.
They're product catalogs. That
I didn't know they had a product.
Yeah,
interesting.
And they also, when they were in Ohio, they made metal cabinets. I can't think what all of course, they did fans. They did a little bit of everything over time.
They actually made ammunition at some place.
We have a shell, and it was from when they were in Ohio. They were making not actually the shell, but the round at the end of the shell, the projectile, and it was for the Korean War. And it's the 1 millionth round that they made for the Korean War.
Wow.
And we've got it down there.
Of course, we know them as the bicycle plant, and then, of course, lawnmowers, but
mopeds.
And mopeds.
Hey, we've got a moped. Went over and somebody told me about it, so we went over to Lincoln County and bought a moped, and Mayor Blake Lay actually paid for it for us, for the museum, and it was a 1982 moped with 1.5 miles on it. It's never been ridden.
Kidding.
It's brand new. It's set in a showroom at a car dealership. Never has been ridden. So we've got it down at the museum now. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There was a few people that rode those around here. Yeah. Quite a few.
Gillum Stretch, they take them up, ride them up down Gillum Stretch all day long.
Yeah, it seems like I saw somebody who had one not too long ago. Interesting. Yeah. I tell you what I had when I was a kid, and I wish I still had it, is I had a pedal boat.
Oh, you'd have some money if you had it today.
I had a little pedal boat. It was a Murray pedal boat.
That or the airplane or the rocket, all those.
Yeah. Wow. Those are good deal. Good deal. Curtis Peters, everybody, from the Lawrenceburg Historical Society.
Let me throw out
you got some stuff you want to share with us.
Our next meeting that we're going to have, we meet out at the college in the big meeting room out there, and our next meeting is going to be April the 25th at 6:30, and I'm going to do a presentation over Sanborn insurance maps, and those are maps that they would do of the communities all over the country, but we've got access to some in Lawrenceburg starting with 1896, and it shows you where every building was, what they were built out of, their dimensions, just all kinds of neat info. So we're going to pull those up and look at them and talk about a bunch of them and kind of watch Lawrenceburg grow by maps.
Are they electronics or
it's electronic? It's on the Library of Congress.
Okay.
You can get to them and see them, but they're really, really neat. And there's so much information that you can look at. And
I've always been fascinated by maps.
I love maps.
I do too. Maps. I'm fascinated by maps.
But that's our next meeting, and then in May, on May the 23rd, we always meet on the fourth Thursday at 6:30 out to college, and then May the 23rd, I've got Tara Dickey, Registry of Deeds. She's going to be our guest and talking about interesting deeds in Lawrence County, maybe something that even go back to Crockett and stuff like that. So,
well, there's a lot of history here if you want to kind of look into it, no doubt. And we touched on the military history. Can you, right quick, and we still got a few minutes left, some of the other major characters from Lawrenceburg and Lawrence County that were military involved?
Major officers. You have the Army. We have 4-star General Hugh Pate Harris. Retired. He was number 2 officer over the Army when he retired, and then he went to the Citadel for 5 years. Then we had George Sonny Stotzer. That was Joanne Abbott's brother. He was a 3-star general. Great career. He's on the Joint Chiefs of Staff and stuff like that. We have Rear Admiral Ingram Sal. He was awarded the Navy Cross in World War I, commanded a submarine in World War I. Wow. And then he commanded a battleship. He commanded 2 battleships I know of, the USS Texas, USS West Virginia in World War II. He was at Tokyo Harbor when the Japanese surrendered. He is on the deck. We have a picture of him when the Japanese are surrendering.
Wow.
Then we have, let's see, we have Admiral Ellis Perry, Vice Admiral. He was a 3-star admiral of the U.S. Coast Guard. He was a vice commander, number 2 in charge of the U.S. Coast Guard. Lived right down the street from me on Douglas Drive.
Yeah.
Then a couple that are associated with us, not necessarily from Lawrence County, but connected to Lawrence County. Sam Armstrong, that was Shine Armstrong's brother.
Oh, really?
And he is from Mount Pleasant, but he got his papers to go to the Naval Academy from Estacole, from Loretta, and he got nominated by Pat Sutton from Lawrence County, so he's got a Lawrence County connection, and he became a lieutenant general in the Air Force. And then we got Fran McKee, she is from everywhere around southern Tennessee and northern Alabama, but she is from Lawrenceburg, and she's cousins to Chunky Moore and Jimbo Parks, and she was the first female fleet line rear admiral in the U.S. Navy.
Oh, wow.
And we've got her admiral flag, her 2-star admiral flag down at the museum. And we've got General Harris's uniform, General Stotzer. General Stotzer came down, and I got to meet him. And I said, General Stotzer, you going to let General Harris outdo you? We don't have one of your uniforms. About a month later, Joanne brought me his uniform. So,
really?
So we got it. And
how neat.
So, we got those. And, of course, Pat Sutton, who was nominated for the Congressional Medal of Honor, who, people like that. Butch Morrow's dad, he was awarded 2 Silver Stars in World War II.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty amazing, Nelson Morrow. I could just go on and on about military people.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And if someone has something, that may be of some historical significance, what should they do?
Bring it by the museum, or give me a call, and I can come meet you, or you can, we'll figure out something.
Yeah.
And Bobby Alford told me probably about 10 years ago, said, you don't have any room to put anything else in here. Of course, I said, somebody donated. I'm going to find a place for it.
We keep doing it. That's
right.
We keep doing it. Is there plans maybe for an expansion there at some point? Or
we're talking about it. I talk with Blake all the time about possibilities and stuff like that, and things. We'll have a plan and something will fall through on it. But eventually, we're gonna get something going. Of course, we got the city fire truck, Old Holy, that needs to be put somewhere, and we've got a 1953 Jeep that we've restored that we need to put in the museum, but we don't have any place down there for it. So
it's being housed somewhere.
Yeah, it's in my son's garage right now.
Yeah.
He wants me to get it out.
Well, you need to hang on to it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You need to hang on to it, just like Old Halsey. Now, I guess it stays at one of the fire halls.
It's at the fire hall down right across from the jail.
Yeah,
So,
but they keep it operating. They keep it running.
I'll send people over there to see it all the time.
It seemed like too long ago. I saw it out. They were driving it.
Yeah.
Get it out and get it on the road a little bit. All right. Well, listen, review again the meetings that are coming up. We got a couple of minutes left.
April the 25th. That'll be a Thursday. At
now, is that at the museum?
It's at the college now. We've got too big. We can't meet in the museum because we'll have 45, 50 people at our meetings now, sometimes more.
So at the new college is where it is.
It'll be in the meeting room at the new college on the bypass out there. And I'm going to be talking about the Sanborn insurance maps and showing them and do that. It's a great place for a presentation. And then May the 23rd, I have Tara Dickey talking about Register of Deeds.
She's doing a good job.
A little bit later on, August the 22nd, I've got Will Pettis. He's going to be talking about the Spear family.
The
gospel music. And, of course, Will's related, my wife's related. So there's a lot of Spear family history that we know that we're going to, present. And then on September the 26th, I've got Tanner Romsdale going to be talking about the history of TWRA. And then I'm working. I haven't got July yet. June we're going to take off for vacation. But
good deal.
So, but when you've done this for like 12 years, I'm starting to run out of presenters. I bugged so many people.
Well, you're doing a fine job, and keep up the good work. Curtis Peters, everybody, from the Lawrence County Historical Society, and of course the Old Jail Museum, where there's a lot to see, a lot to learn, and it's very interesting. And again, those hours are from 10 to 2 Monday through Friday.
Correct.
And if you need extra hours, contact. What is there a phone number for the jail museum?
Area code 931-212-1944.
1944.
That will get me.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much for doing this with us again.
Thank you.
We'll do it again one of these days. Okay. God bless, buddy.
Excluding food and energy. For the year ending in March, consumer prices rose 3.5%.
Fox's Jenny Casola, the annual rate's been rising again, which could further delay